Just going to set us to record. Hi there, good afternoon everybody. This is the Sustainable Business Network and Surrey County Council's collaboration delivering a lunch and learn on green commuting, better health. Delighted to have you all with us today. When we hosted a similar event this time last year, the real feedback was that businesses really wanted to hear from other businesses, top tips, real experiences, what went well, what went wrong. And so we hope today that we've got a number of different case studies and businesses with us from Santander and Bytes to share real insights for you guys to work out what you can do around active travel. I'm Bex Bolland. I help run the Sustainable Business Network, and my partner in crime today is Jaquetta Fuster. We'll be doing slides, but also we're here on the chat. We've got a Q&A session at the end, and it would be wonderful to hear any questions you have as we go. Just admitting a few more people, and we will kick off. So I'll share my slides. Aha, here we are. Hopefully you can all see this. So the context for in the travel space, we've got decarbonisation of transport is really required for us to mitigate climate change. In contrast to the energy sector, we've had huge inroads there, and in the EU we've got less than a quarter of energy produced was from fossil fuels, which is amazing. But in the transport sector it's really been lagging, and actually it's been increasing, which is a real concern. There's so much more freight, particularly light freight, on the roads. In Surrey specifically, transport's a huge portion of the carbon footprint at 47%, and here in along the A3, specifically around Guildford, we've got the most polluted section of the strategic road network outside of London. So really shocking things around transport. Now, I'm not expecting active travel to be able to solve these issues, but I wanted to share the kind of wider context of what's happening in the transport space. We've also, from a health perspective, we've seen declining health generally. So recently, the national statistics around health and wellbeing were released. And interestingly, we can see that there's a real decline in healthy life expectancy. So that's not total life expectancy, but in your 60s is when you have your healthy life until. And what we can see is, particularly around the southeast, it's dropping for females from around 66 years of age down to 62, or 64, sorry. And so, you know, those aren't positive things. 1 in 5 people are suffering from anxiety and depression. So there's significant issues going on that active travel can help with. When we look at the benefits of active travel, they're quite obvious, but really exciting that you can tap into. If you want more details around these stats and facts, there's an amazing resource, which is the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents. And they've got all these stats and facts referenced. So if you're looking at comms plans and really wanting to showcase the benefits of taking up active travel, please do look at that resource. Fundamentally, it's about creating communities and businesses that thrive. We've got the way I look at talking about benefits is often around people, planet, pocket. So for me, planet really matters, but for lots of others, it's their personal health. And that's why I think this is a really exciting space to engage staff in. From a generic kind of behaviour change space, I've done a lot of work in the behaviour change arena, but to boil it down into some real basics to share today, there are 3 kind of fundamental areas I like to look at, which is around reducing barriers, increasing benefits, and then triggering that change. So reducing barriers seems quite obvious, but some of the smallest things you can do can be the most impactful. So I've highlighted hairdryers here, which sounds really pathetic in a way when you're trying to do a massive behaviour change campaign and get more people into walking and cycling. But actually, if you do a staff survey and really tap into what people need to make that shift, it's those concerns about being presentable at work that can be really powerful. So at my old workplace, the women wouldn't cycle unless there was a hairdryer, because they wanted to shower and look great afterwards. And I think sometimes we can get really into the focus on people's commute, but actually it's creating the landscape around which we want those things to happen. And so for me, a travel hierarchy is a really important aspect of encouraging people to walk and cycle. Now that, as a business, it's not a business's responsibility to influence commuting necessarily. It's not a legal responsibility anyway. But what you do on the workplace business travel actually does have a big impact on what people do around their commute. So a travel hierarchy enables you to look at that and showcase the desirable behaviours you want. So the case study I wanted to talk about today was a company that I worked with about 10 years ago, Friends Life, and they were a 2,000 person site based out of Bristol. And they had, their challenge was they had a car park area that was overflowing. They'd already done car sharing spaces right next to the business entrance, and yet they were still clogging up local roads, and there was a real issue with the council and local residents. At the same time, they had quite an active bicycle user group, and that bicycle user group really wanted to get more people cycling. And so we formulated a plan for them to really engage more people around cycling at their work. They introduced more cycle lockers. They cleared out all the dead bikes that had been stored and were clogging up all the cycle parking. And they realised that people didn't really know how to access the lockers, the showers, the drying facilities. So the team decided to come up with a map of where all those facilities were. They also decided to come up with a comms plan. One was, so it had three parts to it. One was a gentleman who had literally lost half his body weight by taking up cycling. Another person was doing it because it was so much more cost effective to cycle rather than take their drive to work. And another woman was going through the menopause and really finding it beneficial from a mental health perspective. So so they created this comms plan, but they realised that didn't feel like it was enough. And they really wanted to tackle this self-efficacy barrier, which is basically, do they feel confident to do it, to try this new behaviour for the first time? Is it easy? Are they going to have a good experience? And will they be able to do it safely? So the team decided to create a map of 12 of them where they cycled from, and they were offering themselves up as a buddy to offer to support people on that first journey into work. Now, the programme went ahead, they did Dr. Bike Days, they did all the things you'd expect, but nobody took them up on the Bike Buddy scheme, and they thought they'd failed. They thought it hadn't gone very well. But then they looked at the stats, and they realised that their map of where we cycled from had 1,000 hits in the first couple of weeks. And they realised by looking at the door swipes that actually 25% increase in the door swipes. So what they, by the cycle racks, so they knew that people had been cycling more. And what they'd done is created a new social norm that it was okay to cycle, and lots of people did it. And wow, couldn't you see that people could do very long distances or very short ones? So it's a really interesting space for me. You know, you can create all the most perfect campaigns possible, and sometimes they have unintended consequences. So I wanted to share that because it's both an interesting one from a success perspective, but also because the team themselves felt like they'd failed. And it's a big learning from my perspective. So I know that's a really whistle-stop tour in terms of what's happening in the space, why it's important, and what you can do to change behaviours. I'm going to hand over to Jaquetta, who's going to take us through an active Surrey perspective.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Bex. That was a really inspiring case study. Thank you. So I'm Jaquetta Fewster. I am the active travel lead at Active Surrey at Surrey County Council. And I'm going to have a go at sharing my screen. Here we go. Let's see if that works. Right. There we go. Is that coming through for people? So this is another case study. It's called Carrots and Sticks versus Carrots. And it's a really interesting study that was done by an academic called Petronov a little while ago now, 2015. Really interesting because there were two very similar employers, very close to each other, well, right next door actually, and they both brought in travel plans to try and support modal shift away from single-use cars to more sustainable transport at the same time. And this group of academics studied what happened. And one employer, it was really successful. They had a 250 increase in walking and cycling, and public transport use increased fivefold. But the other employer, only a 40% increase in public transport use, and walking and cycling actually went down a little bit. So they looked into why this was. So employer one was really successful, but actually both employers did many of the same things. They both introduced a bike loan scheme. They both provided lots of information to help people understand the different routes that were available and the different public transport and cycle paths that were there. They set up a lift sharing platform to link people up that live close together and were on similar shifts. And they brought in inductions for new staff that included travelling to work. But the main thing that employer one did, that employer two didn't, was around parking. Again, as Bex was saying, and I think many of us are experiencing in our own workplaces, parking is not sufficient for all the people that would like to drive. And this was exactly the situation that both of these employers faced. But one of them really looked at it and included it in their travel plan. So they brought in parking permits, and those permits were based on the need of the person, not on seniority, not on length of service, but on their need. And they also brought in parking charges at the same time. And the study showed that what was successful was, again, effective comms, a comms campaign with staff. The messaging that was particularly important was around the fact that parking was a valuable and a scarce resource to be managed. And it was because of this scarcity that the rationale for changing the status quo came about. Senior and middle management support was also identified as being really critical. So how did staff react to this? Well, actually, they were positive. There was a focus group that was held with a range of staff, a representative sample of staff, who ultimately said, actually, it was a positive thing. And they articulated that they were positive because they agreed with the groups that were being given the parking permits. They saw it as a fair system for a problem that the employer was facing. There was some concern about potential for abuse of the system, but the employer did listen to what the staff were saying, and another group that hadn't been included as one of the groups qualifying for the permits was admitted. So moving on to what Surrey County Council can offer to employers to support you with your work to support more of your staff to travel sustainably. We can offer cycle confidence sessions to increase your colleagues' confidence. And I've just been on a cycle confidence session myself, and it was absolutely brilliant. And having lost my confidence over a few years, I'm really going out there and cycling a lot more now. There's also the Better Points smartphone app, which is this really cool app that's proving really popular. Colleagues can earn points for every mile they travel sustainably, whether that's cycling, walking, on public transport, parking and riding. And those points can be exchanged for coffees or other goods on the high street or donated to charity. And we have lots of information about where people can cycle and walk in Surrey. And coming later this year, we've got an e-bike loan scheme that we'll be launching. We've got 5 e-bikes that we'll be able to loan to employers for free for you to give to staff so that they can use them for several weeks and build them into their daily routines and see how they can make use of them and cope with that kind of trip chaining thing that a lot of people struggle with, how they're going to get the kids to school and then get to work on time, so they can really try it out for a while and see how it works for them. And we'll be launching a personal travel planning service, so helping people identify how they could travel more sustainably from where they live to work. And we're always really interested to hear what you need. So there's my email address. Do get in touch with me. Thank you. And now I'm going to hand over to, once I can work out how to stop sharing. There we go. I'm going to hand over now to Natalie Crawford, who is the Sustainability Manager at Santander Consumer UK. Over to you, Natalie.
Thanks, Jaquetta. So, right, I'm going to see if I can share my screen now. So, bear with me. Okay, hopefully that is coming through. Is that visible? Yep, great. Yeah, so as Jaquetta said, I look after sustainability for Santander Consumer Finance. Just to set a little bit of context about kind of who we are and where we operate. So we are part of the wider Santander group, so we are linked to the bank, but we essentially operate quite independently as well. So we started life as a motor finance business, completely separate to Santander. We were then bought by Santander, became part of the group, and we still focus very much around motor finance. That's the core of our business. So we, although we work with the bank in terms of the kind of operational and our footprint and our building, we operate separately. So we have an office within Red Hill Town Centre. We've got around about 680 office-based employees at the moment, and then we have another couple of hundred of employees who are remote field-based around the country. We've got a large underground car park. We've got about 154 spaces underneath the building, which operate on a first-come, first-served basis. Now, the car parking has been in place on that basis for quite some time, and I'll come on to that kind of context a little bit more later on because it's quite relevant for how we've approached and the challenges that we're facing. So before COVID, there was also some additional spaces which were provided at the Belfry shopping centre as well. Those have since gone, so it's just the car park now. I just realised I can't actually see if there's something underneath where I can see all your faces, but if I do miss saying something, I apologise. Right, so moving on. So what we've done to date is we have really focused on sort of individual action around the business and trying to support individuals to understand around their carbon footprint and what they can do through our Green Ambassador Network, which is basically a volunteer network of people who have volunteered to be part of the network and lead on sort of supporting their peers to understand what they can do around climate change, the environment, and spreading awareness. We also have carbon literacy training, which we have recently launched, and that is about ensuring that all of our employees essentially have the same sort of base level of understanding around climate change and environmental terminology, concepts, and can really kind of come on the journey with us, because we feel that if they don't kind of have that basic understanding and can't participate in the conversation, then they're not able to really be part of the journey. So that's around kind of introducing that cultural change at the sort of base level. In terms of what we've looked at and what we've started to do around how we travel, and we are still kind of fairly early on in our journey on this, but we're trying to make some progress, and this is what we've looked at to date. So first of all, we looked at whether an external supplier was the right option for us. There are a number of suppliers out there who can come in and look at how your staff travel and support with journey planning and carpooling and all those kinds of things. We looked at that and decided really it wasn't a cost-effective solution for us, and we would try and tackle it ourselves as a business to start with. So we rejected that as an option. The next thing we did was set up a carpooling forum. This was just using our intranet. Now, obviously, this is not around active travel, so I'm looking a little bit more broadly around greener travel, but we set up a carpooling forum on our intranet, which people joined, but they didn't really use. So it is in place, but it's not really been a success. So we then looked at a travel to work survey and trying to understand how do people travel and what can we actually do to support them. So the carpooling forum didn't take off in the way that we hoped. So really what we wanted to do then was take a step back and understand is carpooling even an option? How do people travel now? What do they want to do? What are their concerns? And how can we influence them to travel in a more sustainable way? So we ran that at the start of this year, and I'll come on to that a little bit more in the future slides. We've now moved on to focusing on cycling in particular. This is one area where we feel like we can try and make a bit of an impact and try and influence people to consider how they travel and maybe whether this is an option for them. So this is in progress at the moment. And again, I'll talk a bit more about what that looks like in detail in future slides. We're then going to look at a Better Points app. So Takeda mentioned the Better Points app. We're going to look at a competition around that. People love a good competition. So we've got a plan to launch that and start getting people competitive, compete with each other and trying to use that as a mechanism to support that. We also have a carbon footprint calculator, which is available on our website currently, supplied to us by a supplier that we work with. And this is available just to generally support anybody can go on there and access it and calculate their carbon footprint. There's an option to tailor that slightly so that it literally just focuses on commuting and travel. So we can use that in its tailored form to support our staff to understand better how they travel and what it means if they change a journey here and there. What does that actually mean? What in a tangible way as well of understanding that. So not just kind of talking about, emissions, but what does that actually mean in terms of something that they can understand tangibly. And continuing to roll out our carbon literacy training across our business. We've rolled it out to around about 30 staff so far, so we've obviously got a way to go. But there's an opportunity to link from that into travel, because through carbon literacy training, individuals have to pledge, or if they want to be certified, they pledge an individual action that they can take to improve their carbon footprint. So there's an opportunity there for us to really tap into that and link people into support to approach how they travel and have that as their action. So coming on to our travel to work survey and what that looks like. So we had 374 responses. This is out of our 680 office-based staff, which for us was great. Typically when we run a survey, we get maybe a 10% response or something like that, very low. So 374, over 50%, we were really, really pleased with that. The survey itself was positioned as very fact-finding rather than kind of having a green agenda. So we didn't approach it as, we're trying to help you travel in a greener way or anything like that. It was literally, we want to understand how you travel, why you travel that way, and what your options are. It was anonymous and voluntary to complete, no incentivization. So again, that's why we're really pleased with the response rate. It seems that people actually really want to contribute to this conversation. And I've since had similar feedback from colleagues who work in the same sort of field and have approached the same sort of survey approach, that actually people really do feel quite passionate about how they travel, and so they do want to speak up. So we had essentially 9 questions which covered these kind of key areas. So how do you travel currently? What's your journey distance and time? What other travel modes are there and why don't you use them? What might make those drivers consider something alternative in terms of travel mode? And then we also asked about awareness of active travel schemes, ease it, and then also our own sort of internal schemes and so on. So what did it tell us? So unsurprisingly to us, most of our people drive. We're not surprised by that at all, given we know the pressure on our car park. So yeah, nothing new there really. By far the most popular mode of transport, in particular petrol or diesel cars. In terms of journey time and location, we're a little bit more surprised by this. I think traditionally people have lived closer to the office, but given the pandemic and the move to hybrid working, we actually have a greater percentage of people who live further away than we probably would have expected. Although we still do have quite a lot of local people, the number of people who live further than 20 miles away is actually quite significant now. And that, I think that is a reflection of hybrid working. And then what this did tell us as well is that those who do live closer to the office, we do have quite a number of people who walk, who are very close, but you can see in that kind of 2 to 5, 5 to 10 miles, people are still predominantly driving and not necessarily using public transport or other options. And certainly our cycle use, you can see, is quite low. So again, probably not typically that surprising for us, but it does kind of tell us what we kind of expected to see there. And then asking about what would influence people to try to travel in a different way if they are currently drivers. Now, this was a free text question. We didn't give them kind of a tick box options. So we tried to categorize the feedback. You can see that over a third either didn't give a reason, or it gave kind of a complete range of reasons that we couldn't sort of neatly categorize. They just wouldn't change the way they travel. They're going to drive, that's it. 20% would consider subsidised public transport. We know that public transport is expensive. So again, probably not much of a surprise there. Not necessarily something we can directly influence easily, but something certainly for us to consider around cost of journeys and how we can potentially support people there. Some did say that they consider car sharing, particularly if there's guaranteed parking spaces available to them. Some did say that they could only drive due to the kind of relative locations of the car, their home and office. Not necessarily that they were too far, but just that their locations meant there wasn't an easy journey. This is something I feel that we can explore further once we have capacity to do that with individuals and look at really how can they travel and what are the options that are available to them, because there will certainly be an element of people who kind of just sort of put it in the too hard basket, but actually there might be some options there that we can look at. And then we did have a number who specified that they couldn't travel any other way because of the school run. We're going to discuss this later on in a case study, which I'll come on to in a future slide. So next steps for us. So we have every month what we call an all teams call, which is a call that every employee can join, a video call. And we typically have a good few hundred people, maybe 300-400 people join that call. So this month we're going to present a high-level survey findings. We haven't presented those back yet, so we're going to do that. We're going to share a cycling case study. So I have a colleague who, thinking about that piece around the school run in particular, he has 2 children. He takes them to school on their bikes and commutes to work on his bike every time he comes to the office. So he's going to share his experience as well as relaying the experience of a few other colleagues as well who've since tried cycling, and just really try and make it kind of personal and share that story about how it can potentially work and sort of plant the seed, I guess, to get people thinking that maybe this isn't so impossible. And we're also going to share our bike to work schemes. So something that we found with the survey, we asked people around their awareness of the schemes that are available, whether it's external or internal. So there's reasonably good awareness of the bike to work existing, the scheme existing, but pretty low take up. So I think what we need to do is really share, what is it? What does it mean? What can you do with it? So that's what we'll be doing this month. We're then organising an e-bike demonstration day. So we've spoken to Bell Bikes, who have some stores. One of them is in Gatwick, and they're going to come in with some e-bikes, and we're going to use the car park and basically give people a time slot. They can come along, try an e-bike, ride around in the car park, and talk to the guys about how to actually use the vouchers you can get from the scheme, all those kinds of things. But really what this is trying to do is bring to life the e-bikes, because we know that those people who live, you know, kind of 5-10 miles away, we're in a hilly area, e-bikes is going to be potentially a really good solution for them. But a lot of people don't really know, what is an e-bike? How does it work? What's the benefits of it? How do I look after it? You know, all those kinds of things. This would be a chance for them to really understand it and try it out. And then we're going to explore what is the level of interest in the different options that we could potentially offer. So this has been kind of a key learning for us, is don't go down the road of offering a solution and then finding that nobody wants to take it up. So we're going to do some sense checking through maybe another survey or some focus groups and understand, do people want that bike confidence? Do they want to learn about bike maintenance, the e-bike loan scheme? Do they need help with finding a safe route? And then we'll start to look at what our next actions could be off the back of that. So in terms of just reflecting back then on what's gone well for us so far and what hasn't gone quite so well. So what hasn't worked so well for us? I mentioned the carpooling, like for proactive take up. People joined the forum, but literally nobody posted to share a ride. So there's obviously some interest there. It's in how do we get that into something. So we're focusing more around active travel right now, but that'll be something for us to consider later on. The survey, as I mentioned, really good response rate. Putting in free text response for motivations or potential motivations for people to change from driving. We thought that would give us great depth of data, but what it did was actually made analysis quite difficult. So if we were to do that again, we would definitely use the tick list or go back and focus on certain areas. As I mentioned, the awareness of the schemes is good, but we know there's fairly low take up. So we need to really introduce people to those schemes and kind of hold their hands a little bit. So what has worked well? Obviously the surveys, parking is a motive topic. Something I didn't touch on earlier, so our car parking at the moment, as I mentioned, is first come, first served. It is about to change, and it is about to go to a permit system, which has been determined by our HR team. We'll start with a by length of tenure. We'll see where that goes. But what that means is that people are no longer going to be able to just drive into the car park if they get here early enough and park. So this is a good time for us to have these conversations, because people are aware change is coming. They're thinking about how they travel. They're thinking about what it might mean for them if they're no longer necessarily able to get a space. So they're keen to share their views, but it's also a good time for us to start to have these conversations and get people thinking about whether there might be another way, because they don't then have to worry about whether they can park once they drive in. Response to our carbon literacy training has been really positive. People are really interested in sustainability matters, it seems. Once you get them involved in conversations, they have strong opinions, they're really keen to learn, and they're really keen to take action off the back of it as well. We have some great pledges that people have pledged off the back of their training into the changes they're going to make as individuals as part of a group. So we know that we can harness that potentially to really impact change around active travel, and using that kind of desire to have a positive impact, and how we can turn that into how they travel. So there's real work for us to do there, I think. HR have been introducing our company benefits on the monthly call previously. So they've talked about various benefits that we have that people have known are there but haven't really used. So we're going to mimic that for the Bike to Work scheme, and we hope that that will have a similar impact by really raising awareness and understanding. We know competitions always land well around here. We have lots of different teams who like to compete against each other. So that's what we're hoping to replicate for better points, again, to get people just starting to think about how they travel, trying out different modes of travel, and hopefully winning some sort of prize. So that's what I'm going to share today. Thank you very much for listening.
Wonderful.
I will stop sharing and hand back.
Thank you very much, Natalie. That's great work from Santander Consumer UK. Well done. I think starting off with the travel survey is absolutely the way to go. The evidence definitely shows that. And just to say, if anybody else wants to do a travel survey, I'm here to help. So do get in touch with me. And brilliant always to collect stories and use those stories, and have lots of carrots available. That's fabulous. And I love the way as well that you're kind of taking a systems approach to the fact that the car park issue is a live one, and things are changing, and seeing how that can form part of your plan is brilliant. So well done, and good luck with all of that. I'm now going to hand over to Tim Vickers, who is the Senior Transport Planner at Surrey County Council. And Tim, I think you're going to talk to us about some of the work that Surrey County Council is doing to support more active travel, more cycling in Surrey. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jaquetta. Can you see my slides there?
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Let's move this on. So just in terms of what I'll cover, I'll try and keep this brief, but just provide a bit of policy context. So the LTP4, and then discuss some of the infrastructure schemes being planned in the county, provide a case study. So the Guildford Godalming Greenway, which is a scheme I'm project managing at the moment. So just in terms of a bit of policy context, so the most recent transport plan, so it was adopted in 2022. It's a 10-year plan, and you can see the key objectives that this plan has set out is a bit of a step change from the previous plan. So enabling a greener future, net zero carbon, sustainable economy, and a piece around sort of well-connected communities and equal access to travel and travel modes, and also health. So this is obviously linked with active travel, sort of the health benefits of transport. What LTP4 has done is, in line with those objectives, set out a sustainable travel hierarchy. So as you can see, the sort of more sustainable, greener, more active, healthier modes at the top, and less so at the bottom. It's not to say every transport decision is going to necessarily sort of prioritise active travel at the expense of other modes. There is more factors involved, sort of, the function of the roads. We still need motor vehicles to get goods and services around, but this is generally sort of going to have a guide to it in future transport planning decision making, and also in line with the objectives. You've got got a list of policies there. These are 4 of the key ones. So promoting active travel, public transport, EVs, and also planning for place. So reducing demand on car trips through shorter distances, shorter trips. So in terms of infrastructure planning, well, the delivery plan which supports LTP4 is still being established in full. It's not fully developed. It is multifaceted. It's not purely about infrastructure and building infrastructure, but some sort of elements to do with public transport and active travel. There's a development of a bus service improvement plan, and as part of that would include schemes to prioritise bus journey times and reliability, and improving accessibility to bus infrastructure. So I'm aware at the moment a scheme is under development between Red Hill and Hawley, and includes looking to install 4 sections of bus lanes along the A23. I'm aware that that's going out to engagement in June and July. So if that is a scheme that's sort of local to your business or of interest, then look out for that one. Actual travel wise, I'll try and cover this quickly, but 2 big programs we've got the LSWIP programs, local cycling walking infrastructure plans. That's a county-wide program. It's split borough by borough, and different boroughs, different stages, but essentially what that's doing is looking at developing plan for where sort of core walking zones, cycle routes will have the best impact, and developing a sort of a list of potential schemes. So what happens is sort of have an early design option, then that will go out to engagement. So building engagement into that, so it's not just Surrey developing the schemes without any input from local residents and businesses. And also alongside that, we've also got a local and street improvements program. It was originally called Livable Neighbourhoods, but changed the name of that to avoid confusion with low traffic neighbourhoods, which have had a lot of press, not always good press. And they're sort of more area based, so kind of looking at more area wide measures that would make streets safer, more people friendly, so active travel, but also place making, so things like tree planting, suds, sort of making streets places where people want to spend more time and be proud of their local street environment. So I was going to provide a case study. So Guildford to Godalming Greenway is a scheme I'm working on at the moment. It's out of the 2 programs, it sits more within the LSWIP program. It's a cycle corridor, but also got walking improvement elements to it. It predates the LSWIP program when it was developed, but it's a good case study as what a sort of LSWIP scheme could be. So it's between Guildford and Godalming and the settlements in between. Originally championed by cycle groups as an existing route. As you can see in the picture in the right, much of it is substandard. This is on the route, but there's a no cycling sign for a short section. So it's that sort of, it's usable, but it doesn't attract many people. We're trying to sort of change travel behaviours. As far as practical, meeting the latest national guidance. So there's in the last few years, new cycle infrastructure design guidance has been published. It sets quite ambitious standards, and it's actually a challenge. The challenge is meeting those standards, because of, if you think about roads that are not necessarily built to accommodate cycle infrastructure in the first place. And the scheme will be aligned with other projects. There'll be some LSI type projects in the wider corridor. And so far, this project has been successful in attracting national funding. So in terms of timeline, feasibility study, so that's generating the first set of design proposals. That was completed in 2022. During that process, so sort of in 2021, whilst that design process was happening, we did a public engagement exercise, got over 1,000 responses, a bit above the sort of typical threshold of support that we receive from active travel schemes, which is good. And then the last year going into this year as well, detailed design. And actually, so towards the end of last year, what we did is we put in some applications for funding to kickstart construction. So a first phase of construction, and we put in bids to both Active Travel England. So Active Travel England are kind of I think they're like an executive body of the government, DfT, sponsored by DfT, and they're really the main funder at the moment for public sector funding for delivering active travel schemes. So we put in a bid, and that's been allocated to this scheme. And then there'll be tranches of funding in the future where, so I refer to the LSWIP programme, the LSI programme, we'll be developing schemes, and then they could potentially be put forward for funding from Active Travel England or other funding bodies. National Highways have also contributed construction funding. So this is just for a first phase, but we'll still be reviewing opportunity to construct a phase 2 as well. So that would deliver the full scheme. So just quickly, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but Guildford to Godalming and the places in between, different types of infrastructure. So predominantly looking at cycle infrastructure. And when you're considering cycle infrastructure, you kind of got to consider the environment, it's not just a standard design in every place. So just give that a bit of context, particularly in the more sort of high footfall urban ends of the scheme. So we're looking at towards Godalming and Guildford ends, looking at segregated cycle infrastructure. So you see these examples. So for example, on the A3100, a length towards Godalming, we're looking at the top image. So segregated cycle tracks in both sides of the road. And then currently under review is the design along A281 Millbrook. So that's just south of Guildford High Street, a two-way cycle track. That will be in phase 2, and the design's still under review. There's quite a few considerations there, as you can imagine. A lot of this area is actually interurban, so shared facilities between pedestrians and cyclists aren't the sort of best case. Try to avoid that where possible, but where footfall is lower, so you can see the example at the top there. This is sort of on the A3100, about a couple of kilometres north of Godalming. The footfall isn't very high, so actually providing a wide shared use facility would be a really good outcome, and that's what we're designing up, so similar to what you see on the right. And then also through green spaces, as part of the route would be through along sort of Dagley Lane, Shalford Park, and actually providing a wide shared use facility is what we're looking at the moment. And another type of design facility is...
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry, we've just got a couple more slides to do, and want to hear from Lisa as well from Bytes.
Okay.
Sorry to cut you short. Is there a final word from you?
Yes, those two slides were just talking about the infrastructure. So just finally, how can businesses make the most of it? One is when we run the engagement and consultation, it's excellent to have input from businesses. Not only does it provide us with useful information, but actually increases the chance of bodies like Active Travel England buying into the schemes and funding them if they see businesses are behind these schemes. And I think the last point was covered. Bex, you covered it in your first presentation, so I won't go through that.
Cool, thanks so much. I'm really lucky in that I am able to. I work with lots of different teams from Surrey County Council. So I've got some other exciting things that are happening here as well. So we've got the e-bike scheme, and Tim was just mentioning about the consultation. So this consultation is live at the moment, and this is the e-bike scheme that's going to be in Guildford, with the intention that it moves across to Godalming, which is obviously complements what Tim's just been talking about. So it's really exciting. For those of you, Zoe and Zoe, who are on the call, this is something definitely to get involved with, and I can send you the links afterwards. But essentially what it will be is a hybrid scheme. So they have docking areas, some of them you lock them in, some of them you won't. They're geo-fenced, and how it works is that people use their smartphone to to access it. I don't know the tariffs, but the idea is that it will be launched in July, so we'll know by then. I think this is a really interesting way in which we can shift everybody to e-bikes who need to travel those longer distances or tackle Surrey's hills. And I know that Natalie was talking about the e-bike scheme they've got going there and hand-holding people. And this is one of those areas where people can try it out and get excited by it. So I'm really excited about this one. Also, there's, I mentioned earlier about A3 being really significantly highly polluted. There's a special EaseIt scheme. Now, Surrey County Council has the EaseIt scheme for any business. You can apply and you can see discounts and etc. that you can access. And there are additional, like extra benefits if you happen to be in the A3 corridor. So just wanted to let you know that that was there as well. Now, I'd love to hear from Lisa, who's going to bring us a commuter perspective. Lisa, over to you.
Thank you. So I'll keep this quite brief because I think it's really important to have the Q&A at the end, because I think that kind of discussion is really important on this topic. So really, I'll just introduce myself. So I'm Lisa Prickett. I'm the Group Sustainability Manager at Bytes, but I haven't always been the Group Sustainability Manager. So I've done quite a few roles at Bytes previous to that. But in terms of commuting, I've commuted in Surrey for probably about 7 years. I started when probably the big boom in cycling of 2012, when the Olympics was going through. You saw, you know, the Olympic riders going through Leatherhead and other places in Surrey, and it was really exciting. And I think that step into going from, you know, I didn't cycle since I was a kid. I did a tiny bit at university, but actually going into that new world of commuter cycling was, you know, it can be a barrier because I had no idea what I was doing. Luckily, my manager was a cyclist, so I kind of got involved through that way. And I think that's really important, is to have someone that's almost like a champion in cycling, someone you can go to and speak to about it. Because to be honest, I thought it was a bit bonkers that you would buy a really expensive bike and it didn't come with pedals. So, you know, now I'm the kind of person that buys the bike without pedals. But it's really, yeah, it's understanding like what you need, what kind of kit you need, all that kind of stuff, what to wear, what routes to use, because it's not always obvious, because you think maybe like a quieter route would be better, but actually sometimes motorists go quite quickly on quiet roads and there's bends and things. So actually a larger, wider road that's maybe got a cycle path, maybe not, might actually make you feel safer. So I think another point is to get people to try out routes, and maybe on a Saturday or a Sunday or a bank holiday, so when it's a little bit quieter on the roads, to actually try your routes out. That was a big part for me, to actually work out what direction I wanted to go. So I commuted originally from Leatherhead to Sutton, and then it was Hawley to Sutton, and then Hawley to Leatherhead. So we're based in Leatherhead now. Unfortunately, I don't commute anymore by bike because it's 40 miles away. I've done it once. It's quite a lot. It was about 5 hours round trip, so it was big. But what I would just kind of reiterate is that need for things that Bex touched on. I know Tim was going to touch on it as well, but hair dryers, absolutely. When I first started commuting to Leatherhead, I had to carry mine with me, which, you know, the more you carry on a bike, the more off-putting it is. So the less you can carry, the better. And it is, you know, it's good you need to look all right. If you hair's all over the place afterwards, you're just not going to commute. So all those kind of things are really important. I like the buddy scheme. I thought was a really good idea, so I'm surprised nobody took that up. But it's interesting to hear how people can get into it. But I think having people they can go to, normalizing it, and all the things around, you know, physical health, mental health as well, that rubs off on other people in the office as well. So you go in, you've got those endorphins, people around you suddenly feel quite good as well. And the same when you get home to your family. So I think that's really good, and you can fit that exercise in a normal day. So my commute by car between between Hawley and Leatherhead was about 30 minutes, but it had taken, and that's on a good day, it had taken an hour and a half, whereas cycling, it was always consistent, and unless I was feeling particularly lazy, but mostly it was between about 56 minutes and an hour, and it wouldn't change no matter on the traffic, because you can get past it. And there's some really good cycle paths. I would say Surrey's done quite well in some of these areas. There are also some really bad ones, but I'm sure that's being changed. So, and it's just knowing your routes. But the thing I found quite difficult is when I'd get into work and people go, "Oh, you're brave," and I always felt that was quite sad. That I don't feel brave. I'm not brave for cycling, and I think people have this perception that it's dangerous when it's not, and actually your health is so far improved by cycling or by doing any active travel than it is from the danger that you face. but it is just that feeling. And unfortunately, I think maybe some of the press has made it a little bit worse, and demonising cyclists. But the more cyclists we have, the safer our roads will be, because those cyclists mostly are drivers as well, and then they understand what it's like to cycle. You know, if you drive an HGV, you know what it's like to be around HGVs, etc. If you cycle, you know what it's like to be around a cyclist. So you're going to give more space. You're going to understand why they do certain things, and you're going to know not to overtake them when there's street furniture in the middle of the road. This kind of stuff. So I think that the more cyclists they have, the safer it will be, and it's great that there's going to be more cycle paths that are away from the road. And like Tim, I agree, when there's pedestrians and cyclists, that's not always the best option, but sometimes we don't have the infrastructure there, and actually any cycling is good. And to be honest, it does make you feel good once you've got into work, and even when you have to get home. Another thing I'd add around having things in the office, and it's something we had in Leatherhead for a bit until the refurb, and unfortunately they've gone, is heated lockers. So one of the worst things, and I'm sure you can imagine, is putting wet socks on at the end of the day. And I travelled in all weathers, and that's not nice. So it doesn't make you want to go back home again just because you don't want to put the wet socks back on. So if there's some way of, and I know this kind of counteracts a little bit of the environmental side of it, of having heated lockers, but there might be some clever way of having the server room heating a drying room. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sure there's the smarter people than me who can work that out. But things like that, where you just make cycling more accessible, more available, more comfortable. And I think people will do it. It requires that normalization, I guess, which is easier said than done. So I think everyone has had really good ideas. So it's good to be involved in this panel. So thank you. But I will hand over to the Q&A now, because I know we've only got a few minutes left.
So thanks so much. Jaketta's messaged me saying, are people able to hang on a couple more minutes afterwards, 5-10 minutes, and then we can extend the Q&A. So we'll keep on chatting. If you need to drop off, do. But it would be great to hear from the floor. I know, Shelley, you already posed a question on the chat. Do you want to ask that now, if you take yourself off mute? Hi, Shelley.
Hi, Bex. Yes, happy to. Yeah, I hope I'm not being cynical about this. I can imagine lots of enthusiasm at the beginning of a scheme like this, and lots of people trying it, and perhaps when the weather's quite good. Has the panel experienced a kind of drop off after a while, in enthusiasm wanes? And if so, what's the best way to really build long-term habits? And I guess what you're saying about making it very comfortable in the office, so warm socks and hairdryers probably goes a long way towards that. But should we expect a bit of a drop off after the initial enthusiasm, or have you not experienced that?
Natalie, do you want to come from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're probably still at a slightly too early stage to see what impacts the things that we're introducing are going to have. In terms of looking forward, though, and how we might address that, I think there is always that danger. It probably depends on what people are doing in terms of getting into the different modes of travel. So if, for example, you're accessing the bike to work scheme to then go and purchase a bike and spending a significant amount of money, that investment probably means you're more likely to persist with it. So it's going to be very individual. I think I mentioned competition earlier. I think that's something that we'll probably, once we continue to revisit how we use competition, because it does do really, really well in our business. That might be a cultural thing within our business, I don't know, but it's certainly something I think you do have to keep kind of revisiting with any initiative. How do you get that engagement? It's talking about it. It's then those things I talked about gauging interest for things like route map support, maintenance support. It's continuing to revisit people who are taking part in these activities. What else do they need to keep them interested? So that's probably what we will be doing, but as I say, we're still quite early on.
Thanks, Natalie. And if I could jump in there, I was talking to one of your colleagues last week who told me a brilliant story about, so I was wondering the exact same question, Shelley, because I think there's quite a bit of evidence around how long it takes to embed a new habit in terms of physical activity. But actually in cycling, it looks like it might be different, because Lisa made that point, didn't she, that people said, oh my word, that's, you're so brave. There's this perception that cycling is not great to do, but then when people give it a try and realize that actually they can get to work quicker, and they get more contact with nature, and they love it, and they feel happy when they get to work, it may not take so long to embed that as a habit. And building on what Natalie has just said, there are some brilliant resources on the Sport England website. They've got a free photo library. So helping to try and change the norm. Bex was talking earlier about the norm, influencing the norm. So having regular stories going out in the staff newsletter and using free images that are available on Sport England is a real help.
Right. And I was just going to say, just reiterating on the side of, I think Natalie was mentioning that, you have to revisit this stuff, and a way in which doing that, I call them hooks, but essentially here we've got various different days throughout the year that are all to do with active travel. So you've got Earth Day, you've got Walking Month, you've got World Environment Day, Bike Week, Clean Air Day, which I'm very personally attached to because I helped set it up, but Bike to Work Day, E-Mobility Week, Car Free Day, and Road Safety Week. So throughout the year, they are typically skewed to the summer months, but these are things that I think you could use for your comms and remind people of a habit maybe they had, but they dropped from using. I was reading the other day that, the new kind of technical length of time you need to perform a habit before it becomes naturalized is 66 days. It used to be 21, now it's 66 days with more research, and that feels like a lot. So I think it is about having this positivity and working out how you can help these people feel delighted by the choices they're making, but also have a bit of bragging rights if they get free breakfast, bonus. So I think there's lots of ways in which we can help people make better choices. I hope that answers your question, Shelley.
Thank you.
Has anybody else got a question?
Good.
Tom?
Yeah, I wanted to just ask, is on safety concerns, like, because I think as Lisa pointed out, there are benefits, but there are can be big worries from like both the staff and their families. Like, for example, a colleague of mine recently announced proudly to their wife that they were going to take up the cycle to work scheme, get an e-bike, and was met with tears. Oh my God, you're going to die. You're going to leave. You're going to leave our kids without a dad. Yeah, I just wondered, like, because I guess there's got to be a balance of what you can't like say, well, you're not going to get hurt. It is dangerous. Surrey County Council has a really high rate of what's it, that one of the highest rates of fatal and serious injuries to cyclists. What's the balance there?
I think, Lisa, did you want to chime in on this one?
Sure. I mean, I haven't got the stats to hand, but if you think that, I guess it's talking about the longer term killers, the things like, I mean, this is very negative, but heart failure, diabetes, cancer, all those things which cycling actually kind of reduces your chance of getting. So you'd be there for a father for a longer period of time. But if you look at the stats on kind of, I know serious injuries aren't great. I think that in terms of the deaths of cyclists, I think it's about 1 or 2 a year. So it's not, but the thing is that they hit the news and you're more likely to hear about them, whereas when people are driving you don't hear about it as much. But actually deaths of motorists are quite high as well. So neither way of commuting is completely risk-free, but I think it is that risk trade-off, just like maybe having a vaccine or something. There is a slight risk that vaccine could have an impact on you in a negative way, but there's also a very high chance of it affecting you not getting a really, really serious disease that could kill you. So it's that balance, and unfortunately I think some people don't necessarily have that risk framework of understanding both sides of it, if that makes sense. But it is hard in those contexts, like you say, when you're talking to a partner who's worried about you. I mean, I was in the same position, to be honest. Now thankfully I've got a cycling partner, but it was, they were incredibly worried, and I don't really know how you get over that apart from by doing it and being all right, because the only way they're going to understand it is from your experience.
Yeah.
So I don't think that really helps, does it? But
yeah, and from I think you mentioned earlier, Lisa, about the public health benefit, the long term, if we're thinking about the prevention of agenda, so we're trying to stop people ending up needing the NHS over the longer term because they've got heart disease, as you mentioned before. And so a few years ago, when we were looking at air pollution and getting people to make better choices, actually you're much more exposed to air pollution when you're in the car. than you are cycling. So you're safer cycling, but of course you're breathing more deeply. So talking to epidemiologists about what the impact of that is, their view from a public health perspective was, even though you're potentially breathing in pollutants more deeply into your lungs, you are less exposed than you're in the car, but they're going deeper. That actually was so much more beneficial for you moving around and being active for your long-term health. So I think people are always going to find things that they're going to be scared about. And it's about allaying those fears and making sure people are making better choices about where they cycle. I personally try not to cycle on any major roads. It's not always avoidable, but I always choose quieter routes. And I think if people can build confidence in their friends, family and co-workers by helping each other choose quiet routes to get to work, and safe routes. Of course it needs the infrastructure there, Tim. I live in Shalford, so I'm very interested. It makes all the difference. But I think if we normalise that that's how you get around, and you don't need to be close to the HGVs to get somewhere, I think that's really important. Natalie or Jaquetta, do you want to chime in on that one at all?
Just to back up really what you've both been saying, I used to work at Macmillan Cancer Support, and yeah, the evidence around being physically active is huge in terms of preventing things. One of the biggest risks to health is being sedentary. So yeah, I think it's, yeah, again, it's to do with norms, isn't it, and what people think about things.
And maybe it's a case of getting her out on a bike ride with him, like go out at weekends, have a little ride around, and then hopefully she'll be able to see it's not as bad as maybe she thinks. That's
yeah,
sorry,
I just
Bex,
back up what you've all said.
Oh, sorry, Natalie. Interrupting
No,
everyone.
sorry. No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, yeah, I totally agree with what you said. It's really about wider context and seeing what you can do to support the conversation with people who are concerned, and offering things like bike confidence. I think the idea of getting them out as well is a great idea, Lisa. Just encouraging them to see it from their own perspective as well.
Can I pipe in? Is that okay? Sorry, it is a very specific question to do with the Mole Valley LC whip. I know our members have put in loads of comments on that. I also know that the cycle forum has been very active, and we just seem to have hit a block with where the status of that is. So is that a Surrey County Council? Which bit of Surrey County Council do we need to talk about?
Thanks, Julia. Unfortunately, your line is really buzzy, but I think we got the gist there. Tim, would you be able to give us an update? Do you happen to know the status of the LC whip in Mole Valley?
I don't know the position of that specific one, but I can try and find out.
Thank you.
That would be fantastic, because there are little blockers that stop people cycling, and we have people in Leatherhead who won't go along Randall's Road between Cleve Road and our business park. It's a business park that's got really large employers on. We used to have a backdoor route that took us onto Cleve Road, so to avoid the very busy bit which all of the HGVs etc. use. And yeah, it's just going nowhere. So, but we do have members who come from such a long distance. It's just the last bit of feedback. If you want to get more people on their bikes, you've got to look at the danger points as far as they're concerned, and also the number of people who might use it.
Great, thanks, Julia. It wasn't completely clear, but I think we're all in agreement. More infrastructure, better infrastructure is something that will be a win for all of us. So I think we'll wrap up there, and I would like to ask the panelists if they could choose one thing each of our attendees could leave with, what their one thing that they should think people should do more of would be around active travel. So Lisa, you're off mute, so I'm going to pick on you first.
I had my thinking face on. I guess it's either be that person who can help others or find a person who can.
Great, thanks, Natalie.
I guess for me, it'd be just talk to people at work and try and understand what their logic is, what their challenges are, what goes through their head when they choose to get in a car or get on a bike or whatever, and try and really understand their perspectives so that then you can form a plan together rather than forming a solution for people, get them involved in the forming of the solution.
Thanks. And Tim?
Yeah, I was just thinking, so I mean, I've been involved in schemes that have been delivered in the past, and once the scheme's been built, it's just that next step around how can we raise the awareness with the people that end up using it essentially. Yeah, so it's that piece going forwards. So not just finishing a scheme and that's it. It's been built. Move on to the next one. There's a next stage, isn't there, that I think is really important.
Yeah, engagement and feedback. And maybe even creating viral content. We've been talking a lot recently around if the e-bike scheme comes through, what cool videos could we do throughout Guildford? And that'd be really exciting. Jaquetta?
I would kind of echo what Natalie was saying. Let's talk to people or do it in a structured way. So let's send out, as Santander have done, a survey and find out what people think, what their barriers are, and then we can put a plan together that's going to affect more people. Yeah,
I'm absolutely with you. Travel survey, travel hierarchy, and making sure that everything's fit for purpose. Brilliant. Thanks everybody for your time today. Really excited to have such a brilliant panel. Thank you ever so much, speakers. And thank you all for joining us at this Lunch Learn. We've got our next event on the 23rd, which is Thursday. So if you're free in Guildford and want to come and join us for some networking around sustainability and collaboration, do join us at the New Zero site. So that's this Thursday. Thanks ever so much, everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.